They call it progress. The cities grew taller, the lights brighter, the machines faster. The world became more connected. Yet people have never felt so alone. In the pursuit of comfort, something essential was left behind. The West conquered the material world, but lost the spiritual one, modern but empty. That is the silent truth of our time. You can see it in people's eyes. The exhaustion that success can't cure, the restlessness that comfort cannot calm. They have everything to live with, but nothing to live for. They know how to build, but not how to belong. The modern man has mastered the art of productivity, but forgotten the meaning of peace. Sheikh Zayed saw this long before the world did. While others were racing toward modernity, he was being trained by simplicity. His life began far from wealth, in a land of silence, struggle, and faith. The desert was his teacher. It taught him patience when others rushed, humility when others demanded, and reflection when others only reacted. While the West was learning how to achieve more, Zayed was learning how to need less. While they built empires of steel, he built strength of character. His training was not found in books or universities. It was written in the wind, the sand, and the hands of his people. And that is why his story matters today. Because Sheikh Zayed reminds us of what the modern world has forgotten. That progress without purpose is just a more comfortable kind of emptiness. The modern world celebrates progress as its highest achievement. Every year, technology becomes faster, cities grow taller, and life becomes easier. Yet, behind this glittering surface lies a quiet contradiction. The more advanced we become, the more disconnected we are from ourselves. The world has learned how to create abundance, but not how to create meaning. Sheikh Zayed understood this paradox early on. He admired innovation and the potential of science, but he feared what would happen if progress stopped serving humanity and started ruling it. For him, modernity was never the enemy. It was the imbalance that came with it. He believed that machines could assist man, but should never define him. Progress must serve the human being, he once said, not the other way around. He watched nations build endless skylines while neglecting the foundations of their societies. He saw people surround themselves with comfort, yet lose their resilience. The same tools that promised freedom began to enslave minds through distraction, greed, and speed. Zayed often warned that a nation obsessed with growth but detached from gratitude would eventually consume itself. To him, true progress was not measured by what you build, but by what you preserve. Your values, your humanity, your connection to God and to others. He believed that development without moral direction was like a ship with powerful engines, but no compass. It moves fast, but nowhere meaningful. When he began modernizing the Emirates, he insisted that every building, every school, every law must serve the soul of the people, not just the image of the country. He demanded that modern education include lessons of respect, culture, and faith. He said that knowledge without wisdom is dangerous because it gives people the tools to build, but not the reason to build rightly. In private, he worried that future generations might grow up surrounded by wealth, yet starved of spirit. He used to say that if the new world teaches children to look only at screens, they will forget how to look inside themselves. For him, progress that costs the soul is not progress at all. It is polished decay. Zayed often reminded his ministers that wealth and technology were blessings only if they created harmony, not arrogance. He encouraged balance, to embrace the modern world without abandoning the eternal one. That was his true vision, to prove that a nation could be both advanced and anchored in faith. The price of progress, as Zayed saw it, is paid when man forgets why he began to move forward in the first place. When ambition replaces gratitude and speed replaces reflection, the future becomes hollow. He left behind a message that remains urgent today. If progress does not make us better, it will eventually make us lost. The world can build faster, reach higher, and connect wider than ever before. But without soul, all that progress is just movement, not meaning. Sheikh Zayed believed that technology should lift the human spirit, not bury it. For him, progress is not the problem. Forgetting what it's for, that is the true price. Sheikh Zayed's real training did not happen in classrooms or royal courts. It began in the vast silence of the desert, where survival demanded patience, faith, and humility. Long before he ruled Abu Dhabi, he was a young man shaped by wind, sand, and scarcity. The desert was his first teacher, harsh, honest, and wise. It stripped away comfort and left only truth. In Al-Ain, there were no formal schools when Zayed was a boy. His education came from observing the world around him. He watched the elders of the tribe mediate disputes with fairness and dignity. He listened to stories of courage and generosity told around the fire at night. He rode camels through endless dunes, learning to read the direction of the wind and the language of silence. Each day taught him that wisdom does not speak loudly. It waits to be noticed. The desert tested him constantly. Days of scorching heat followed by nights of bitter cold. Long journeys with little water. The endless horizon that demanded endurance. In that environment, impatience was dangerous and arrogance fatal. To survive, a man had to stay calm, observant, and grateful. These lessons became the roots of his leadership. Zayed learned that faith was not just a belief, but a form of strength. He saw that men who prayed before they planned were less afraid of failure because they understood that everything came from God. When storms struck, when wells dried up, when paths disappeared into sand, faith gave direction. It taught him to trust that no hardship is permanent, and no blessing should be taken for granted. He learned humility from the land itself. The desert humbled even the proudest men. It reminded him that no one commands nature. One must cooperate with it. That humility shaped his character as a leader. When he eventually gained power, he ruled as one who serves, not as one who controls. He used to say that leadership begins the moment a man learns to master himself. Those who met him later in life often noticed his calmness, a stillness that came from years of listening more than speaking. He once said, "While the West was teaching ambition, I was learning gratitude." His gratitude was not weakness, it was awareness. He had seen how easily pride destroys and how patience builds. The lessons of the desert never left him. When he governed, he used the same principles that had guided him as a young Bedouin. Observe before judging, serve before expecting, and act only when necessary. To him, every challenge was just another form of the desert, harsh on the surface, but filled with wisdom for those willing to endure. This was Sheikh Zayed's true education, one learned through silence, service, and self-control. The desert had taught him that strength does not shout, it stands steady. Real spiritual power is born when a man learns to observe, to serve, and to wait. Sheikh Zayed left behind monuments, cities, and prosperity. But his greatest legacy cannot be seen. It can only be felt. It lives in the character of his people, in the way they speak to one another, and in the quiet respect that still shapes daily life in the Emirates. He built a nation from sand and vision. But what truly endures is the spirit he instilled: unity, generosity, and faith. The true measure of a leader is not what he builds in his lifetime, but what continues to grow after he is gone. Zayed understood this deeply. He knew that wealth could vanish and buildings could crumble, but values, once planted, would take root for generations. He did not want a nation that only looked modern. He wanted one that felt whole. That is why he built as much with ideas as with stone. He taught that kindness is strength and that humility brings dignity. He led by example, not by command. Those who worked with him remember how he treated everyone, from ministers to farmers, with the same courtesy and attention. He believed that leadership was not about distance, but closeness. A ruler, he once said, should be a father to his people. That philosophy became the heart of Emirati identity. Today, decades after his passing, the echoes of that mindset remain. The generosity that defines Emirati culture, the hospitality toward guests, and the unity among citizens, all trace back to his teachings. In a world that often divides itself by wealth and status, the UAE continues to value respect and cooperation because Zayed made those virtues the foundation of its existence. His legacy is visible not only in the skyline of Abu Dhabi, but in the invisible fabric that holds society together, the sense of shared purpose, of collective progress, and of pride without arrogance. These are not accidents. They are the results of a vision rooted in spirit, not ego. Zayed used to say that the real wealth of a nation is not its oil, but its people. He meant that education, ethics, and unity are resources far more powerful than any natural reserve. He believed that every citizen carried a responsibility to protect those values, just as he once protected the fragile dream of unity when it was still uncertain. When people speak of Sheikh Zayed today, they do not only recall his leadership, they recall how he made them feel safe, heard, valued. That is the mark of true greatness, to live on in the hearts of others as a presence, not just a memory. The invisible legacy of Sheikh Zayed is not carved in marble or written in law. It is alive in the spirit of his nation. In every act of generosity, every word of respect, every bridge of understanding built between people. The greatest monument to Sheikh Zayed is not made of stone. It is the character of his people. Sheikh Zayed's power was never loud. It did not come from armies, titles, or wealth. It came from an inner stillness, a discipline of the mind and heart that guided every decision he made. In a world that rewards speed, Zayed valued steadiness. He believed that the greatest strength a person can possess is self-control, and he practiced it every day of his life. He lived by a rhythm that never changed, no matter how powerful he became. He rose before dawn, prayed, and spent time in reflection before meeting his advisors or addressing the needs of his people. For him, prayer was not a ritual, but a reset, a moment to align his heart before facing the noise of the world. Those who worked with him often said that even in chaos, his presence brought calm. He carried peace within himself, and that peace extended to those around him. There were moments that tested his patience. Leaders and diplomats would sometimes provoke him, pushing for a reaction. Yet, he never responded with anger. He once said, "Anger blinds justice," and he lived by those words. In one story, an official publicly criticized one of his decisions. Instead of punishing him, Zayed invited the man for coffee the next morning. They spoke quietly, and by the end of the conversation, the critic became one of his most loyal supporters. Zayed knew that calmness disarms conflict faster than authority ever could. His self-discipline went beyond temperament. It shaped his approach to leadership. He took time before making important choices, refusing to rush into judgment. To him, speed without thought was recklessness disguised as efficiency. Ministers sometimes grew impatient waiting for his verdicts, but when he finally spoke, his decisions were balanced, precise, and wise. Patience, he used to say, is not weakness. It is the strength to wait for the right moment. That patience came from faith. Zayed believed that everything, success, loss, wealth, hardship, was part of a divine test. Faith taught him perspective. It reminded him that power was temporary and that leadership was a form of service. He often said that a ruler's duty was not to command, but to care. He saw service as an act of worship, a way of showing gratitude to God by serving his creation. This combination of discipline, faith, and service gave Zayed an authority that no title could match. People followed him not out of fear, but out of respect. They knew he would listen before he spoke, think before he acted, and forgive before he punished. That kind of leadership built trust, the rarest currency of all. In today's world, where everyone is trained to react instantly, to speak before thinking, to fight before understanding, Zayed's example feels almost revolutionary. He proved that control is more powerful than aggression, and that reflection creates results far deeper than impulse ever could. The world trains you to react fast. Sheikh Zayed trained himself to respond right, and that is why his power endured, because it came from mastery, not over others, but over himself. The modern man has conquered everything, except himself. Surrounded by comfort and innovation, he moves faster than ever, yet he feels increasingly lost. His life is filled with noise, screens, and deadlines, but empty of silence, purpose, and peace. He knows how to build wealth, but not how to build meaning. He can reach anyone in seconds, yet he struggles to truly connect with those closest to him. The world has become brilliantly efficient, but deeply restless. Sheikh Zayed saw this crisis long before it became visible to others. He witnessed nations chasing material progress while losing sight of the spiritual values that once gave life direction. To him, this imbalance was not just cultural, it was dangerous. He used to say that when a man forgets his spirit, his intellect becomes his master, not his servant. Intelligence without purpose, Zayed believed, leads to arrogance. Progress without conscience leads to collapse. In the West, Zayed observed a world that had mastered technology but forgotten tranquility. He admired the achievements of science and the brilliance of modern systems, but he saw that many people, though surrounded by abundance, lived with emptiness. Rich in things, poor in meaning, he once said, describing a world that measured success in possessions rather than in peace. Zayed's life stood as the opposite of this rush. While others were driven by ambition, he was guided by reflection. He did not fear slowness, he feared blindness. The blindness of moving quickly without knowing why. He used to remind his people that a society running without purpose is like a man running in circles, exhausted, but nowhere closer to truth. He believed that spirituality was not about religion alone, but about awareness, remembering that life has a higher order, that every action must serve something beyond the self. In his view, technology was a blessing only when it uplifted humanity. When it distracted people from gratitude, compassion, and community, it became a curse disguised as progress. The modern man's tragedy, as Zayed saw it, was not his hunger for success, but his confusion about what success truly means. He pursued speed instead of direction, possessions instead of perspective. He mistook movement for progress and stimulation for happiness. Zayed's wisdom offered a different path, to slow down, to reflect, to remember that peace begins within before it can exist anywhere else. He believed that nations, like people, could lose their souls if they forgot the purpose behind their progress. He would often say, "We do not build cities to glorify ourselves. We build them so people can live with dignity." In the end, his words feel prophetic today. The world has connected through machines, but disconnected from meaning. Sheikh Zayed's life reminds us that advancement without awareness is not evolution. It is elegant decay. The world today is divided not by borders, but by balance. The West mastered progress, innovation, efficiency, and individual freedom. But along the way, it lost touch with silence, reflection, and spiritual depth. The East, in many ways, preserved those older truths: respect, patience, faith, and the understanding that not everything valuable can be seen or measured. Sheikh Zayed believed that wisdom was not owned by one culture or another, but that humanity could only thrive when both sides learned from each other. To him, the West represented movement, the constant pursuit of what is next. It built with brilliance and courage, yet often forgot to pause and ask, what for? The East, on the other hand, carried the memory of stillness, a slower rhythm that values gratitude as much as ambition, and meaning as much as success. Zayed saw greatness not in choosing one over the other, but in finding harmony between them. The balance, he said, lies between progress and the soul. He admired the West's determination and creativity, but he warned that knowledge without faith becomes arrogance. He respected the East's spirituality, but he cautioned that faith without action becomes stagnation. For him, both worlds were incomplete on their own. Progress needed morality, and spirituality needed motion. Zayed often spoke of the desert and the city as symbols of this duality. The desert teaches patience, humility, and endurance. The city teaches vision, structure, and innovation. A wise nation, he believed, learns to carry both: the silence of the desert in the heart and the ambition of the city in the mind. That union, he thought, was the secret to lasting civilization. He believed that the West could rediscover meaning by remembering three things the East still holds sacred: respect for elders, gratitude for simplicity, and connection to the divine. These values do not slow progress. They give it direction. They remind the modern world that technology can create comfort but never peace, that wealth can build houses but not homes, and that education can shape the mind but not always the soul. In Zayed's view, the East could also learn from the West, not to abandon its roots but to strengthen them. He encouraged his people to embrace modern tools while preserving their spiritual compass. "We take from others what helps us," he said, "but we do not lose ourselves in the process." His dream for the Emirates was exactly that: a bridge between two worlds, proving that faith and progress can walk side by side. As the world continues to move faster and grow louder, Zayed's message becomes even more urgent. The West has much to teach about innovation, but it must remember what the East never forgot: that the highest form of advancement is inner peace. True progress is not in what we create, but in what we become. The future, as Sheikh Zayed envisioned it, belongs to those who can unite the strength of modernity with the depth of spirit. The balance between progress and the soul, that is where humanity's real wisdom lies. Sheikh Zayed was a man who thought in generations, not years. While others planned for immediate results, he looked far beyond his lifetime. He believed that true leadership was not about personal achievement, but about legacy, what would remain when one's name was forgotten. He who does not plan for the future, he once said, will regret the present. For Zayed, vision was not just seeing what could be built, but understanding what must endure. In the early 1970s, when the Emirates were still taking shape, he began one of the most unlikely projects the desert had ever seen, planting trees, millions of them. To many, it seemed absurd. The desert was seen as eternal and barren, a place where nothing could grow. But Zayed saw possibility where others saw emptiness. He understood that life, like leadership, required patience and faith. He believed that what you nurture today, even if unseen, defines the strength of tomorrow. He ordered irrigation systems to be built and invested in agricultural research. He encouraged farmers, offered seeds, and personally visited areas where green life was beginning to take hold. Over the decades, the once sterile land began to bloom. The trees Zayed planted outlived him, turning empty landscapes into symbols of persistence and foresight. He proved that vision is not prediction, it is creation. But his long-term thinking was not limited to nature. It shaped how he built his nation. When wealth from oil began to flow, many urged him to expand quickly, to compete with other powers. Zayed resisted haste. He preferred slow, steady growth, the kind that builds roots before walls. He invested in education, healthcare, and infrastructure, knowing that these were not expenses, but seeds. He believed that a nation's true wealth was in its people, not in its profits. He often reminded his advisors that leadership should serve those who are not yet born. To him, every decision carried moral weight because its consequences would echo through time. He wanted his successors to inherit stability, not chaos, gratitude, not greed. A good leader, he said, plants what he may never harvest. That belief defined his rule. When he built cities, he ensured that heritage was preserved alongside progress. When he pursued modernization, he made sure faith remained at its core. He saw the future not as something to be conquered, but as something to be cared for. This harmony between modern ambition and spiritual grounding became the soul of the Emirates. Zayed's vision extended even to human relationships. He treated unity as a long-term investment, not a political convenience. He spent years fostering trust among the tribes and neighboring nations, believing that peace, like a tree, grows slowly but deeply. Today, the stability of the UAE is the direct fruit of those early efforts, of a leader who understood that time itself is a tool in the hands of the patient. In a world obsessed with speed and short-term success, Sheikh Zayed's approach feels revolutionary. He built for endurance, not applause. He was not interested in being remembered as the fastest, but as the wisest. His trees still stand as living reminders that patience is not delay, it is strength. While the world chases quick gains, Sheikh Zayed built lasting value. His legacy teaches that true vision is not seeing farther than others. It is caring more deeply about what comes after you're gone. Sheikh Zayed's life was proof that true power does not come from control, but from character, and that real wealth is not measured in gold, but in purpose. He belonged to a rare kind of elite, one not defined by privilege, but by principle. While others sought luxury, he was trained in humility. While others ruled with authority, he led with example. His strength came not from what he owned, but from what he mastered within himself. Zayed never saw leadership as a throne. To him, it was a responsibility, a trust between a man and his people. He often said that wealth was a test, a mirror reflecting a person's true nature. Money, he once remarked, is like water. If it flows, it nourishes. If it stagnates, it poisons. That belief guided his entire life. He gave generously, lived simply, and worked tirelessly, proving that abundance means nothing unless it serves others. He knew that the hardest battle any man could fight was the one against his own ego. Every day he practiced restraint, gratitude, and patience, the virtues that most people ignore because they demand discipline, not desire. They were never meant to know this, he might have said, because most wouldn't have the courage to live it. The modern world teaches people to chase power. Zayed learned to channel it. It teaches people to collect wealth. He learned to share it. In his view, greatness was not about standing above others, but about lifting them higher. He measured success not by the size of his palaces, but by the strength of his people. His legacy reminds us that leadership without humility is hollow, and that wealth without wisdom is just a heavier kind of emptiness. Sheikh Zayed proved that mastery of the self is the foundation of all achievement. The true elite are not those who possess more, but those who give more. The true leaders are not those who command, but those who serve. Power and wealth, as he lived them, were never prizes. They were responsibilities. In the end, his life carries one timeless message. Power and wealth begin with self-mastery. And that is why so few ever truly attain them.